My brother teaches computer science. He also got a couple of degrees in sociology, and then he went on to pursue psychology, and now he teaches all of them. And one day he calls me and he says, I have a class today. I was looking at the textbook I used for my class. There is this very, very tiny paragraph on Karl Marx. I said, really? Oh, how long is the paragraph? How many sentences? How many lines? Oh, it's only 10. Only 10 sentences about Karl Marx? That's like a footnote in a footnote in a footnote. And then he calls me some weeks later as he was going to teach a psychology class. He says, oh yeah, today I'm going to talk about Freud. The only problem with the textbook is that it just mentions Freud in a footnote. The father of psychology, so easily dismissed. For those of you in this class who've ever been to therapy, you go somewhere, some idiot listens to you, and then before you leave, they grab a pencil or a pen and a notepad, and they'll say, go to the pharmacy downstairs, and here are the pills you need to take. Your stories have been reduced to taking a pill. The point I'm trying to make is you need to understand how contaminated human beings are. And it has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with the way society is formed or structured. At our very core, we are blind. We want attention. We want to get ourselves out of loneliness, despite all the yearnings and the longings that live inside us. Now, when Joseph is sold, do you know who buys Joseph? It's the Pharaoh. Ultimately, to whom do we sell our goods? Society. People who don't care. I've published a few books. And so when publishers contact me, they say, okay, well, listen, we're going to give you 3% of all the profit. We'll take the rest. I say, it took me 10 years to write this goddamn book. Well, if you want to be published, we'll give you 3%. And also, the stuff you wrote in chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 20, most of it is really junk. So we're going to delete most of it and only publish the things we like. It's my life's work. We understand, we respect that, we appreciate that. But the truth is, if you want to be published, 3% profit and 90% junk. What do I do? I'm a pathetic little man in the middle of nowhere. Do I want to be published? Absolutely. Do I want to be recognized? Definitely. To whom do I sell my soul? Publishers. They're like the Pharaoh. For those of you who may not know, Henry David Thoreau had a brother. I think his name was Michael, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I am. One day, as Henry David Thoreau was teaching his class, the principal walks in, takes notes, and before leaving tells Henry that, when you're done with your class, can you come to my office? Sure. Henry David Thoreau walks to the principal's office, and the principal looks at him and says, 90% of what you have talked about in the class, it's just ridiculous. It's no good. You need to change your teaching style. And Henry David Thoreau looks at him and says, I quit. Why would you want to sell your beauty to a world that doesn't care? I know all of us in this class want money. We sell our music for money. We sell our ideas for money. That's what we do. That's the Pharaoh. One day, Pharaoh, Pharaoh has a wife. His wife's name is not mentioned in the Old Testament, but her name is mentioned in the Quran. Her name is Zuleikha. As Zuleikha is walking, she just looks up and Joseph is standing by the window of his cell. Oh man. She looks up and she can no longer look down. She just keeps staring and staring and staring. And the sun sets, the moon comes about, and her mates come to her and say, it's time to go. You've been staring over there, that direction, for the past 10 hours. And she does the same thing day after day after day after day. This is the other thing you need to understand. There is a feminine part to all of us in this class. And this feminine part, as opposed to the masculine, that desires and demands power, physical power. The feminine, like Eve, Sheva in Hebrew, in the Garden of Eden, Sheva only desires beauty, a beauty that's unvarnished, untouched by the human world. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the red ink Bible or the red ink Gospels. So they've come to realize that perhaps out of all the stories, all the statements, for example, made in the Gospel of Mark, there is a black ink mark and there is a red ink mark. So all these Christian scholars come together and say, how likely is it for Jesus to have said A, B, C, D? And if you look at the red ink Gospel, for example, Gospel of Mark, you realize there may be only 10 in the entire book. Only 10 statements made by Jesus. The rest, other people. Now you may say, well, that's such a waste of time. And what you have are all these Christian scholars. They really just want to be in the presence of the authentic Jesus, not the fake ones. So you need to understand, when you hear something, when you see something, when you smell something, taste something, touch something that inspires beauty from within, you have no choice but to be captivated. Despite all the power that all of us in this class have in the presence of beauty, it will floor you. And consider yourself to be very, very lucky if you ever have those moments. Now the maids look at Pharaoh's wife and say, you are a married woman. You know the Pharaoh will gouge out your eyes. He will cut off your head. Don't you want to change your ways? It's like when you have intense emotions, your parents knock on your door and say, honey, don't feel that way. It'll be okay. Your parents are logical, rational. They're filled with social fears. You, on the other hand, you're in the cradle of love. You feel intensely. Or maybe you hate, and you hate intensely. And your father keeps telling you, forgive him, love, it's okay. What the Pharaoh's wife Zuleikha understands is that there are two camps in the world. Those who have been touched by beauty, burnt by beauty, and those who simply look at beauty from a distance and they write books about it. If I was to ask any of you in this class, why don't you write an essay about what happens to someone when they turn 70? And let this be a research paper. I'm sure many of you in this class, if you were to be focused enough for a couple of days, you will write great essays. Read some articles, copy and paste. But if I was to tell Ray, write me an essay about what it means to be 70, there's a good chance he'll give me like a paragraph, 10, 15, 20 sentences, and then he says, I can't tell you more. Well, why? You have lived 70 years. You can write a book. What I feel doesn't fit language. There are no containers for all the ways I feel about being old and having lost opportunities, having lost abilities. And so a 70-year-old gives you silence and 500 pages that are blank. A 20-year-old, because they're arrogant, they'll give you 5 volumes of books. Now, Zulaykha understands that her maids will never understand what happens when you're touched by beauty. So you know what she does? And this is a mark of a good teacher. They don't sit you and rationalize things with you. They don't have a conversation with you. You know what she does is that she says, I am going to go to Trader Joe's and buy a bag of apples. And then I'm going to go to Safeway or Costco and buy 25 really, really sharp knives. I will give each of you, my maids, an apple and a knife. And you stand in a row. And then there will come a point where I will call in Joseph. Look at him for only a nanosecond. Then bow your head and peel the apple. Easy enough. Joseph will come in, we'll take a look, and then we'll peel the apple. And they're all standing, all 25 of them, each holding an apple and a knife, sharp. And Zulaykha whispers, Joseph, Joseph, come in. Oh, and he does. And the maids just look up for a nanosecond. But a second turns into 2 seconds, 5 seconds, a minute, 20 minutes, half hour, an hour. And Joseph leaves the room. And the maids look down and they have cut all of their fingers. When you are in the presence of Joseph, wisdom, you don't care what you lose. You don't care what happens to your body. You don't care what happens to your mind. You don't care what happens to your emotions. You will sacrifice willingly. You see, Ray? He sacrificed his youth, his time, his energy for social reformation. He was passionate. He was in the cradle of compassion and empathy and sympathy. Time passes, his passions are diminished a little. Now reflection comes about. Now logic comes about. He looks back and he says, I did all these things in the past 50 years for people. What has it gotten me? Backache, neck ache, arthritis, zero energy, lack of patience. I did everything for all these people. In the end, I have nothing. So as long as emotions consume you, you can't think. Once the force and intensity of emotions diminish, then logic comes in, rationality comes in, sobriety comes in. Now you begin to see, and you won't like what you see. So remember, we're always in the grips of love and hate. You too, thank you. For the first time, all these maids who were standing on the outside looking at the Pharaoh's wife and judging her came to realize that they had no business judging, because they too have behaved very much the way that Pharaoh's wife, Zulekha, has behaved. اگر بر دیده مجنون نشینی به غیر از دید خوبی لیلی نبینی. Long time ago, I took this young woman home to introduce her to my family. Oh man, I loved her. She was beautiful. My parents were quite respectful. When she left, my mom looks at me and says, "Son, are you okay?" I said, "What, Mom? I want to marry her. I'm in love with her. I have found my soulmate." She says, "She's deaf and she's blind and she can't speak well and she's limping and she's like 95. How could you, as a 20-year-old, love a 90-year-old woman?" And I look at my mom and say, if you were to look at this woman through my eyes, you would see nothing but beauty. Emotions have a tendency of blinding all of us. If you want to know why someone does something to you that you don't like, put yourself in his shoes and you will understand. The only way compassion works, genuine compassion, is when you're able to put yourself in another person's place. That's the only way. The rest is fake. And it's a really, really tough place to be. If you have had a father who's been a drunk and he's never paid you attention, ask yourself, is it easy to be in a marriage you don't really want? Is it easy to work at a job you don't really want? Is it easy to get old and realize your life has amounted to nothing? Is it really easy to want to change only to realize you can't? Human life is really, really complicated, really, really tough. And is it unfair for a 20-year-old to look at a father or a mother and think all these thoughts, put themselves in their father's position? No, it's unjust, it's unfair. But if you want to transform negative emotions into positive, that's the only way. If you want to transform hate into love, if not love, at least compassion, understanding, that's the only way. And there are no shortcuts. Since you're running close to the end of the class, let me just finish up the story. The Pharaoh has a dream. And for the ancient folks, dream have a great amount of meaning. They come from the gods. It's not like Freud. They're not part of your unconscious or subconscious, none of those things. They are what Jung suggested. They all come from a world unseen, untouched by human beings. They have messages, divine messages, wisdom messages. So the Pharaoh has a dream, but doesn't know what the dream means. And then they tell him, you know, there is a guy in our prison, his name is Joseph. He knows how to interpret dreams really, 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 really well. Ask him. And the Pharaoh looks at him and says, I've had dreams. You know, 7 lean cows, 7 fat cows, what does it mean? 2 points here. Dreams are profoundly significant. Should any of you in this class ever have any dreams from which you wake and you say, oh, this dream feels a little weird. It smells funny. It smells good. It feels good. I feel as if it has some substance. Bring it to class. Ask it. And we'll see where it goes. Don't dismiss your dreams. They are important. The other point about this dream, the only way that dreams can be interpreted the right way is through Joseph, someone who embodies wisdom, has access to beauty. Egypt goes through 7 years of famine. People are starving and they're dying. The father who's blind, who hasn't seen his son for 10 years, they say, let us go to the Pharaoh and ask him for some food. The father and 10 of his sons walk to the kingdom. The gate is opened unto them. They are waiting for Pharaoh to come in. What they don't realize is that the Pharaoh is no longer the old Pharaoh, it's the new Pharaoh. Who is this new Pharaoh? Joseph. Ultimately, justice reigns, as Plato would say, the philosopher king. Jesus Christ now occupies the White House. That's Joseph. Joseph sees his father and his brothers from a distance, but he doesn't come out to greet them. And that's the other thing you need to understand about wisdom. Wisdom will never reveal itself to those who are not ready. All of us in this class assume that we are ready. Only wisdom knows if we really are ready from the inside. As they walk into the palace, something really amazing happens. Jacob is blind, you see. But if you have the right sorrow inside you, if you have the right sadness, if you have the right set of emotions and intellectual components inside you, you have 5 senses. You don't see with the eyes of your head, you see with the eyes of the wisdom that live inside you. As the old man Jacob walks into the palace, his nose, he says, I smell something familiar. When you become blind, you can't see anything. And if you can't see anything, you're not going to desire Lamborghini. You're not going to desire Kim Kardashian. You are blind. And when you're blind, you are without sin. You're like a child. You just want food, shelter, and clothing. You don't care if it's a mansion or a studio. You just want to make sure the jacket someone gives you doesn't smell. You can't see. Your definition of beauty is no longer about things looking good at the outside. Unless you become a child, you will never enter the kingdom of God. Simplicity in blindness. That yes, you will go to Yahoo, Kim Kardashian will be front page. You look at her, but she can't inspire an ounce of emotion about you. You've become blind to that particular type of beauty. Jacob smells. I smell something familiar. And like a dog, he follows the fragrance. And then he's standing very, 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 very close to the son he had assumed to be dead. He smells him. Says, no, it can't be. Smells him some more. The brothers can't recognize because the brothers are filled with envy, jealousy, desire for power, but not the man who's blind. The man who's blind only wants to be in the presence of beauty, nothing less and nothing more. He has ultimately found beauty. How do you find beauty in your life? As long as your five senses are active and engaged, you will never, ever, in a million years, become a philosopher. You will never be able to study philosophy the right way. You will always have the wrong emotions, and you will process the information with your logic and rationality in all the wrong ways. In the end, if you are blind and you're blind in the right way, wisdom will come to you. And those who have backstabbed wisdom, the brothers, Joseph looks at them and he forgives them. Why? Because wisdom gives you understanding. So remember, you can read, you will have information. You may even have a good amount of knowledge, but you will never be wise. The only way you can gain wisdom, become blind. How do you become blind? Love something that is truly beautiful. Then lose it. Then go on this journey. And if you're lucky, it'll once again present itself to you. Well, another day has gone, another waste. It's good to see all of you. I know I didn't answer any of your questions. Anyways, it's good to see all of you. Take care. See you on Tuesday.